Good evening, my name is Anna Maria Arabia. I'm the Chief Executive here at the Australian Academy of Science, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all here to the Shine Dome, which is the home of the Academy of Science and of course the home of science in Australia. I am absolutely delighted to see you here in such great numbers. May I acknowledge that today we are gathering on Ngunnawal country, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and pay my respects to all traditional owners where fellows of the Australian Academy of Science live and work. We are always stronger when we bring together different knowledge systems. There has been such an impressive level of interest in this public speaker series, and it in part reflects the wonderful audience that is a Canberra audience. You know, we have sold 150 in-person passes, series passes, so that's to every part of this series this year, and many are purchased, you may or may not know, as Christmas gifts for the lovely, unique Canberra audience. I think there is no finer gift personally, and of course 800 online passes. So interest in AI is absolutely there, and we hope to be able to answer many of your questions. If you're joining us from online, a very warm welcome to you. We will have an opportunity to take your questions too. What makes this speaker series even more special is that we have Lish, who is our MC across the entire series. Many of you here in Canberra would know Lish from her time on ABC Canberra and from her local storytelling over the years. What you may not know about Lish is that she studied biochemistry just down the road at ANU and also worked at Questacon for many years, so has absolutely refined her science communication skills as a presenter, speaker, writer and exhibition developer. So she loves Canberra and Canberrans love Lish, so please join me in welcoming Lish Fejer.
And Lish Fejer loves Canberra. It's lovely to be here. Thank you, Anna Maria, and I'm glad you didn't say exhibitionist because I can be that as well. I must admit, it's so lovely to see you all here in person at the Academy of Science, but also online. Thank you for joining us. And I'm sorry you don't get to be here if you're online, because I think while the Academy is famed for so much, a lot of you don't know how wonderful the architecture is from the outside, but the seats are extraordinarily comfortable. Are they not? Now tonight, it is all about AI. We're going to kick it off with that very question, what is AI? And from the response that it has generated, I suspect we don't all get what AI is. Can I just have a show of hands before we start as to who has used AI today in their work? Yeah. For anyone, I should have said who hasn't used AI today. Fair enough. So I think the very idea of AI, I was just starting to get my head around the cloud and the fact that it wasn't up there, but was in fact a giant data centre of computers. That now we have AI, and I think a lot of us think ChatGPT was when AI came about. But as you're going to hear from our extraordinary panellists tonight, AI is so much more. It's what you know you're doing, but so much of it is in things that you have no idea about. And the future of it is expanding rapidly. Just even within the last 12 days, we've seen huge changes, and it continues to. So, before we start though, tonight is going to be a broad brush look at AI. We've got 3 fantastic panellists, but only 1 hour, and I have the unenviable task of wrapping it up after that 1 hour. So I'm going to employ AI, the emotionless AI, and say, hey Siri, can you set the timer for 1 hour?
1 hour, starting now.
You've been warned. So let's start. Thank you, first of all, to the series conveners tonight. Professor Bob Graham, Academy... She's still listening. Professor Bob Graham, Academy Vice President, and Professor Ian Chubb, Academy Secretary for Science Policy. And thank you also to our event sponsors and supporters tonight, Digital Science and Pawsey Supercomputing Research Centre. Now, before we kick off, I would like to invite up CEO of Pawsey, Mark Stickles, to say a few words. Now, Mark did declare as he entered the room tonight that he has an arts degree, and I think that's a fabulous thing in the Academy of Science. Please give him a big round of applause.
In the spirit of complete openness, I'm also not from Canberra, I'm from Perth, having travelled here today, and I did use AI up in the cloud on the plane on the way over here today. I'd also like to welcome you all here and say thank you to the Academy for this program, and acknowledge that it's a privilege to be here on Ngunnawal country and at the Shine Dome to support today's discussion for AI and science, and a field that's really starting to reshape the way we explore, understand and innovate. And fittingly, it's led by our National Academy. I'd also indulge me for 10 seconds. I'm actually sitting in the chair of a wonderful fellow and a former boss of mine, Professor Cheryl Prager, who I wanted to find her seat and I sat there. I didn't realise that Professor Prager's in town as well, so I think she's in the room somewhere. I just wanted to say hello, Cheryl. Oh, there she is. Thank you for letting me sit in the chair at the front. So what is AI in HPC? HPC is high performance computing. So AI is powered by high performance computing and enables researchers to extract insights from massive data sets at unprecedented speed. Machine learning identifies patterns, while deep learning, powered by neural networks, tackles even more complex challenges. But as we heard in the introduction, we've been doing this for decades. But today, we're seeing generative AI and agent-led systems, AI systems emerge. And it's critical to manage those responsibly and strategically. AI is not magic. It's built on data, algorithms and human decisions. And to ensure AI serves science and society, we must not only invest in computing infrastructure, but in the governance, expertise and the ethical frameworks that underpin them. National and cross-sector conversations are absolutely critical. So what's Pawsey's role in AI? For AI, we're seeing it transform science and research, and our systems at Pawsey are at the forefront. So we have a supercomputer called Photonics, which is the nation's most powerful, one of the world's most powerful GPU systems. It provides the computational backbone for cutting-edge science across the country, and universities across the country use this system. The GPUs at the heart of this drive deep learning, simulations and large-scale data processing. But technology alone is not enough. At Pawsey, we believe human ingenuity powers AI's greatest breakthroughs, and our team is inspired by the scientists who see AI as a tool to explore new frontiers, and we're proud to support the Academy's program. You might also be reflecting on energy and sustainability when you think about AI. I hope you are. Supercomputing at the scale we operate requires very responsible energy use, and I was telling one of our youngest guests that the system that we use at Pawsey is one of the most energy efficient in the world. It was launched as the 4th most energy efficient system in the world a couple of years ago, but it still uses the amount of power of a small Perth suburb. So it gives you an idea of the sort of energy demand that we're dealing with. So sustainability is at the core of our mission, balancing the computational power with environmental responsibility. But you're really interested, I'm sure we'll hear it from our panellists, about AI in action and AI in science. A couple of examples to get you thinking. AI-driven research is revolutionising fields. So in health and medicine, we've got AI trained at Photonics that's helping patient outcomes for young children dealing with paediatric anaesthesia responses. And we can predict traumatic brain injury in injured patients with 90% accuracy, so predicting that to help save lives. Predict the swelling that happens in intensive care for traumatically brain injured patients, giving clinicians a 20-minute window to intervene. In climate science, AI helps generate West Australia's most comprehensive climate change projections, which inform policy and adaptation strategy. And then we look up to the space around us, above us. In space and planetary science, we're actually using AI to map craters on Mars and understand some of Martian geology. So from human to universal scale, it can do all of those things. To harness AI's potential, we need strategic investment in both technology and people. And at Pawsey, we ensure Australian researchers have world-class computing resources to tackle our biggest challenges. But AI isn't just about the world of algorithms and hardware. It's about the inspired work of scientists, engineers, and researchers who bring curiosity and creativity to every problem. As AI advances and creates text and images and autonomous decisions, we must also advance the ethical and strategic AI governance model that oversees this. So AI's future depends on computing power, responsible management, and deep investment in human intelligence. So with that introduction, and hopefully I haven't been shouted out by Siri, I really thank the Academy for this opportunity to support this wonderful and really important conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So we've got an hour, but then there's going to be another 5 lectures in this series throughout the year. So if you did get your Christmas present of the annual pass, what is AI today? Then health, environment, food, safety, and science and research is the final one. And if this is just your taster, please join us for the rest of them, because I think the word will get out. Now, setting the scene tonight, we just want to unpick what is AI, how it's going to help us, and I think for everyone that's listening tonight, why you need to know about it, why we need to start thinking critically about AI and understanding it, just so we can make decisions around it. So it's rapidly evolving, and tonight we're going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think there's 2 negatives in that, but I think our guests will make us see the optimistic side very strongly. So I'd like to welcome tonight our fabulous guides to this expanding universe of AI, an extraordinary panel of human intelligence. Thanks, Mark. It's not actual intelligence, it's human intelligence. And Professor Toby Walsh, can you please give Professor Walsh a big round of applause? Now, I feel we should all know Toby because he literally is the pioneer of AI here in Australia. For 40 years, he's been working in AI, an Academy Fellow here, so he's very familiar with the smell and feel of this beautiful building and all the work it does. But Chief Scientist at the University of New South Wales AI Institute, multiple papers, books, not just for academics or researchers or computer scientists, but for the general public. After this hour, you'll be wanting those books because he is such an extraordinary communicator of something that I think a lot of us find quite hard to get a grip on. From policy to governance to just inspiration, but also realism. Delighted to have you tonight. Thanks, Toby. Professor Jeannie Patterson also joins us from Melbourne. Big round of applause for Jeannie, Professor Patterson. Now, Professor Patterson is the Director for the Centre for Artificial Intelligence and Digital Ethics at the University of Melbourne. Her research focuses on the regulatory and ethical challenges around this, and I guess you might be thinking that the very reference of digital ethics is something we may never have had to navigate before, but now it's very much at the forefront of what we are about. Not only does she do that, she looks at AI's potential in all of this, in developing policy and governance and ensuring fairness and transparency in all of this. So, Professor Patterson, thank you for joining us on the panel tonight. And finally, our third fabulous panellist is Sarah Carney. Big round of applause for Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Do you like how I'm building the panel of absolute expertise? Now, Sarah is the National Chief Technology Officer for Microsoft Australia and New Zealand. She's based here in Canberra, and when you think of all the superpowers of tech, I think the handful of big players, Microsoft is certainly in there. So she heads up the technical strategy, vision and execution for big customers, government, business, and building a workforce around that. I don't think she could have anticipated what's gone on in the last 12 months, let alone the last 12 weeks here in Australia, but it's wonderful to have your expertise on the panel. Thank you, Sarah. And we were expecting Anthony Murfitt tonight as well to give us the government's perspective on regulation around AI, something they are tackling as quickly as the technology is evolving. I wonder who is winning that race. But unfortunately, he's unable to join us tonight, but I think we have a wonderful panel. So I'd also like to point out something that we've got on the screen here. While we mightn't think we use AI in everyday life, I guarantee you do. But just on the screen, I noticed that this image is generated by AI. The staff at the Academy generated it. Have you noticed? I mean, the likeness of, I think Sir Roy Grounds designed the wonderful dome. It's almost there, but I'm just thinking it missed the very, I guess, human element or animal element, which is the ducks. It's disappointing to see. But I think the ducks will always override any technology they develop to prevent them landing. It's wonderful. Now, we are going to also have, look here, we've got a live graphic artist who's watching and listening to our panellists tonight. And she will be drawing her own conclusions, well, mainly drawing her inspiration from our panellists. So Indigo Strudwick is joining us to graphically represent everything we are unpacking tonight. And I'm so looking forward to seeing what she represents, and I'm sure it'll be a beautiful combination of human and tech. So let us start. Toby, I'm going to kick it off with you because you have had a ringside seat to the evolution of AI, 40 years, and over that time I imagine you've seen the pace of change just ramp up exponentially. I would like to start by asking you, first of all, what is AI? Because I think we have to tackle this subject. You've all come here and I don't want to not deliver. But what is AI and what's held you in it for so long?
Thank you. Well, for those of you who got this as a Christmas present, Merry Christmas. AI has been a lifelong fascination of mine ever since I was a young boy. Reading too much science fiction and realizing that the sorts of dreams that I was reading about, written by authors like Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov, were things that were going to come true. And they were possibly going to come true in my life. And that I could be one of the people who helped to bring those dreams into reality. And so as a young boy, that's what I set myself the goal of doing. A little aside, my parents will honestly admit to you that the one thing that was special about me was that I was the most stubborn child. And so what I stubbornly decided I was going to do when I was 12 is what I've spent the last 40 years doing. Trying to build in computers the sorts of intelligence that we see in humans, to get to do these sorts of things that when humans do them, we say they require intelligence. So that's perceiving the world, getting computers to see, getting Siri to understand when you speak to it. That's one thing that we'd use our intelligence for, that we're now getting computers to do. To reason about the world, make decisions about the world. Of course, you'll be telling us about the ethical and legal consequences of getting computers to make decisions, and then acting in the world. So increasingly we're having robots of different shapes and forms in our lives. Well, what's providing the intelligence, the ability for those robots to do smart things? That's artificial intelligence, or the brain of the robot, if you like. So that is AI. There's a lot of AI, though, that's already in your life that you probably didn't realize. A lot of you put your hand up to using AI today. I suspect there were some of you who didn't realize that you could have put your hand up if you got directions to the Shine Dome on your phone or on your car. That was a little AI that was working out the quickest way, taking into account the real-time traffic in Canberra. Oh, I know, it's Canberra, you don't have traffic, do you? Well, maybe you've got road closures or something, real time, but working out the quickest way to get you from A to B. That's something that requires a little bit of intelligence, how to read a map and navigate a map. And there's a little AI, and that's perhaps the most common use of AI in everyone's lives. If you get after tonight's entertainment, if you still need to be entertained and you go home and you listen, you open, Netflix or whatever streaming service that you like using, you'll see, Netflix don't advertise this, but Netflix is essentially an AI company. Everything they do, everything you see on that landing page of Netflix was chosen for you, chosen based upon your previous viewing preferences, what rows you see, what movies you see within those rows, even the tiles, the little pictures that they use to illustrate the movies, chosen for you because they're the ones that the AI thinks you're going to most like. So your satisfaction, your willingness to pay the Netflix subscription every month depends upon the success of the AI to make some good decisions about what you might like to watch. So there's lots of examples of AI that are part of our everyday lives. But as was mentioned in the description about the Pawsey Centre, increasingly it's being used to make other big decisions, not just in businesses, about making businesses run more efficiently, and within science and medicine, helping us accelerate the rate that we do science and medicine.
Jeannie, you're in the thick of the snake pit that is digital ethics. AI has us all in somewhat of a moral panic or a moral pondering, either way. Where do you see the promise of AI in your work? Because you had an interesting route into it as well.
I did have an interesting route into AI. So I'm from Canberra, and my father worked at a place called Honeysuckle Creek on the Apollo moon mission. He taught himself to program a computer, and he said to me when I was about 11, "Jeannie, you'd really like this. You should get into it. I see a future." And being a precocious 11-year-old, I said, "Don't tell me what to do. I'll make my own decision." Here I am, a lawyer who wishes they were a computer scientist. So I really enjoy teaching law students about technology, and actually computer science students a bit about law and ethics. And I think technology is wondrous, and I'm involved in projects where it's doing really useful, interesting things. I'm doing a lot of work at the moment on digital mental health, so trying to use data and AI to predict early onset psychosis in young people, and to give mental health professionals tools to help them manage their day more efficiently so that they can keep doing their important jobs. So the technology is great. The problem, as I see it, is that we don't understand the technology, and so we also make dumb decisions and dangerous decisions about the technology. And the technology is new, but ethics isn't. And ethics is really valuable because it helps us think through difficult problems. There's no magic there. There's no quick answer. But an ethical perspective on the challenges of technology can at least help us think through what we think is right, what we think is good. Because a lot of the challenges of technology haven't arrived yet. They're about values and norms and what we want to be as a society. And that's why I think ethical thinking is really important here. And Toby's book.
I want to disagree with one thing, I want to defend the scientists here, which I agree we don't understand the technology well enough, but the problems are much more fundamental than just if we understood the technology, it would disappear. There's fundamental issues with concentrations of power that we're seeing that we have to address, and we've always addressed when new technologies have enabled new businesses and they've concentrated power. And we've had to work out, well, how do we make sure that all of us prosper from these technical advances?
It's true, but we've just used the Netflix example about how Netflix feeds us TVs and shows that we might like, and we think this is great. I mean, if we can unpack that, we may also go, well, there's a commercial motive here, and where's that taking me? And what's this doing to the random? And what's this doing to spontaneously finding things? Yeah. Remember we used to go to video stores? I think I can say this. Young person, we in the olden days used to go and get these things. You used to just find movies, right? And that's how you discovered classics. So I entirely agree with you, Toby, but I think understanding is the first step.
But I think this plays really nicely to where Lish started, which is why do we all need to understand AI? Why are we all in this room right now? Because if we don't understand it, we can't make choices. And you made a comment about dumb or dangerous, and I feel like that requires you to be informed to make a dumb choice. Whereas actually what we want you all to make is great choices because you're then informed and you understand it. And I think that's the challenge we're facing into right now, is how do we make sure there is this wonderful dispersion of understanding and information around this so you can make the right choices. Because I know you say we go back and we fix things when new technology comes through, but I feel like the genie's out of the bottle and we can't stuff it back in. So how do we make sure everyone understands what the genie can do so we can put it in the right places? Because just because we can doesn't mean we should.
On the genie's out of the bottle, Sarah, I just want to introduce you because Clippy has come a long way.
Clippy's cool again.
Clippy is cool again. You remember that little Microsoft thing would pop up and say, it looks like you're trying to write a Word document. Microsoft now, one of the big tech powers. It's a superpower in this space. And I guess AI and computing are synonymous with each other. And you are in the race to build this. It's a race to incorporate it, help us understand it, sell it, and also to put some guardrails around it as well. Where do you see the promise for AI from a Microsoft perspective as well?
I think Toby talked to a lot of the opportunity. Like, I am an AI optimist, but I'm also an AI pragmatist. So I think there is this huge opportunity that sits in front of us to actually enhance the lives that we live. You talked about healthcare and education are great places. How many teachers do we need in our schools? We can't scale to teach everyone the way they need to be taught. But AI can help do that. It can provide that personal tutor. It can answer questions when a teacher can't be there with a student. So there are these beautiful places where it can actually help amplify our humanity. And it's that careful choice, because you also alluded to that loss of creativity if we put AI in the wrong places. The fact that we see lazy thinking creeping in because you're like, oh, I'll just ask ChatGPT to do that thing for me. And we stop critically thinking about things ourselves and it becomes a crutch. Crutch, not crotch. That'd be a really bad thing for it to become.
Watch the graphics on that one.
Draw that picture. That'd be amazing. AI is a crotch. So I am a real optimist about where we can put these things and what we could do with it. But it absolutely needs to be balanced with those kind of guardrails that you're talking to, and that's why we're so hard. And I'll play Anthony's role as the government here. That's what we need. We need to see these guardrails that are being developed, the mandatory and voluntary guardrails, so that we as a nation can think about what we need to consider and is this being fair and is it available to everyone and does it scale and who are we excluding if we actually bring this technology into certain places.
Clippy is unfairly maligned. One of my friends, Eric Horvitz, actually was one of the people behind Clippy, and Clippy was actually taken over by the marketers, unfortunately. Clippy was actually much better as it came out of the lab. And unfortunately, the marketers made Clippy much too intrusive than actually Eric and his team had intended it to be. So, poor old Clippy.
Clippy got into the wrong hands, and I think that's a lot of...
Yes, got into the wrong hands.
But actually what you see in the difference now is the choice you get to make. So Clippy was annoying. Clippy kept popping up and suggesting it was intrusive, and you didn't have a choice about it unless you kept clicking close. The difference now you see is you get to make a choice. Oh, I need some help with this, I'll ask Copilot. I need some help with this, I'll go to ChatGPT. And I think that's the piece I like. You get to opt in. You make a choice about using these new generative tools, if you consciously understand them. Sorry, Lish is trying to get a word in. We knew this was going to happen.
But all I was going to say is, but you don't necessarily get a choice about whether AI is used on you. We can choose to use it, but whether it's used on us is where we don't have a choice. And
welcome to social media.
Yeah. I guess I wanted to start with the promise, but it seems to have taken a turn. Let's continue while we're on in the promised land. We will just Toby, I'd like you all to just give an example of where you see AI being used, certainly considering we're in the Academy of Science or elsewhere, that is being used to great effect that we would have no idea about.
Since we are in the Academy of Science, I had the pleasure, privilege to be invited to the Prime Minister's Prizes for Science a few months ago here in Canberra at Parliament House. And I think I was the most unpopular person of the evening because that was the evening they announced the Nobel Prize for Physics, which they gave to two people in AI, having given the Nobel Prize in Chemistry 2 days before, again to Demis Hassabis, another AI person. So I think the physicists and the chemists were a little upset with us AI people for coming in and stealing all their prizes. But they shouldn't be upset, because they demonstrate how AI is starting to accelerate how we do science. And just to mention the Nobel Prize in chemistry is, I think, a beautiful example. AlphaFold. This is an AI program that works out how to fold proteins. Proteins are the molecules of life, right? You are a bag of proteins. All your life comes down to assembling and disassembling proteins. And proteins have a three-dimensional structure. And how biochemistry works depends centrally upon the three-dimensional structure. We all know that to our cost from, we all know about the spike protein in COVID-19. The three-dimensional structure of that was central to its ability to infect us. So understanding the shape of these proteins is central to understanding how drugs work, how we can make new drugs, how life works in general. And so being able to now work out the structure of all of the proteins that humanity knows about, all 100-odd thousand proteins that we know that go into life, is going to transform, is starting to transform. New drugs are starting to appear. And to do that, that's something that humans could never have done. We don't have the patience and the computing power to be able to work out how proteins are likely to fold. That takes a huge, immense, complex calculation to do. But that's something that we've got AI to do now, and to do almost as well as nature does in reality.
Jeannie?
The one I like, and the one that I like to teach about students, is actually computer vision. So computer vision is computers being able to recognise objects. I can't stay out of the darkness. There are some bad applications of computer vision. It's called facial recognition technology in public places. But it's also been used to try and get self-driving cars. Whether we want that, I don't know. But computer vision is used to track endangered animals. It's very human time intensive to sit in a hide and try and identify endangered animals. People are now setting up cameras, and the cameras have connected to a computer which is trained to recognise rare animals. And in the case of quolls, can even recognise which quoll by the spots, which is amazing, right? That's just thoroughly amazing.
I'm going to add to your animal one then. So my son's favourite use case of AI, he calls it the poo drone, and it's preserving quokkas. So looking at quokka communities, it flies over the quokka communities and waits until they disperse, and it flies down, takes a sample of the poo, that's the poo drone, and it uses genomics to actually then analyse the health of those communities, which is an amazing way of preserving, endangered species. But I want to play to something that Mark was talking to with Pawsey, which is the energy. Energy is such a big issue when it comes to any technology, whether it's supercomputing or AI. And so we actually collaborated with Pacific Northwest University just over a year ago. We wanted to find a greener battery to help power those data centres that we have, because right now we use diesel. But it's not a really good resource for us to be using. And so we used AI plus supercompute to take 30 million potential electrolytes and narrow that down to 18. So a researcher trying to do that piece of research, that's beyond human scale. You couldn't realistically do that piece of research without that capability. And so that meant they then had 18 that they can focus on and work on and then take that forward. So I think that's a really powerful use case. But if you'll allow me, I'm going to give you my favourite one. I got to go to the cricket last week, and Cricket Australia have launched their Match Insights. And it's great for me. I've never been to the cricket before. I know nothing about cricket. I didn't know why there were 4 people in a weird formation behind the wicket. I didn't know what was going on. But it now tells me. I can ask what's happening on the field. So using Vision AI, what's happening in this match? And why do we care that that person just got out? And so it actually creates this wonderful engagement for people in spaces that I would have had no idea what was going on. I would have been bored for hours on end. And actually I spent 5 hours thoroughly engaged in this match because I could use the insights to keep asking questions and understanding what was happening. And I think that's our opportunity, is how do we learn more of what's happening around us?
I think it's a good point to move to, well, I guess from unbridled enthusiasm to the perils. Because I think I listened to that story and I think that's amazing technology. But a little piece of me says, could you have asked someone next to you?
it might have been more embarrassing to reveal your ignorance of the national game.
And I think that points to the humanity of the humanness and that connection, and it may have built further connections for you, though, by knowing that. So there's all of this. But onto the perils. Brace yourselves, because I think from data to privacy to energy that has been alluded to election interference to wars and the theatre of war, inequality, bias, the list goes on. Who wants to kick this one off on the clear and present danger and reality?
I'll start on energy, if you don't mind.
Yes, I'd love you to.
Which is that we need to be incredibly mindful of the energy use. Data centres used to use just under 1% of the world's energy. Today, it's about, as far as we know, it's around about 2%. It's doubled in the last couple of years, and we can't let that carry on. We have to worry because, we're burning the climate. But the good news there is how fantastic the human brain is, right? We're trying to do what the human brain does. We know that takes 20 watts of power. Your brain is the most energetic organ in your body. Your brain, interestingly enough, uses more energy than your heart, but it's still only 20 watts. That's a third of the energy that your body produces. 20 of the 60 watts or so that your body produces goes to your brain. But we know that intelligence can run on 20 watts. So the ultimate target in the long term is to build intelligence, not that runs, on the Pawsey supercomputer, but that runs on this, your mobile phone. And the great thing is, if it runs on your mobile phone, is it will be your AI. The data won't be shared with anyone, not with Microsoft, not with anyone else. It will be staying on your mobile phone. It will be your AI that does the things for you, not for anyone else. So that's where we're going to. Of course, we have to worry how we get there and how much energy we use in the meantime. But we know you can do it with 20 watts of power, and I'm confident that science will get us to doing artificial intelligence with 20 watts of power as well.
You can see the pathway to that right now with small language models that can run on your mobile phone. So absolutely, that's I think where we'd all like to go.
As a concrete example, when ChatGPT was launched last day of November 22, they spent, we don't know, somewhere around $30-40 million training it. A lot of compute, thousands, millions of hours of GPU usage on some big computer like the Pawsey Center. Some colleagues at the University of California, Berkeley, have built a ChatGPT clone. They did it for $300 worth of Amazon Web Service credits. Sorry, it wasn't the Azure cloud, but I'm sure we could have done it on the Azure cloud as well. That's a 10 to the 5 reduction in the amount of compute. We saw that with DeepSeek. You might have heard about DeepSeek recently. There's a constant drive and ambition to do more with less, and we will get there. We have to worry about, as I said, how we do it.
So all of those examples, I think, tell us something really interesting about AI, but also about law or regulation or guardrails about AI, because for every example that we've just mentioned, which is a fabulous use, there's a non-fabulous use, right? So I've talked about computer vision that can find quolls or pick up poo. That same technology can be used to surveil the population, to identify, do all sorts of things in times of war so that drones can target more efficiently. Almost all of the examples, the example of learning can be used to discriminate against people. It goes on and on. So every good use of AI can have a bad use. The recommender algorithms of Netflix can give us choice, but it can also take it away. And that tells us something. It's about the people, not the technology, when we're talking about from a legal perspective, that we perhaps need to focus on the use cases rather than the technology. But we can only do that if we understand enough about the technology to put in place guardrails against those bad use cases while preserving the good use cases. And there's an element of power and control in there, but there's also an element of understanding, respecting the democratic institutions that are supposed to control the powerful corporations, and making choices as humans about what we value. So I think it's fine to use an app to understand cricket, because I don't like cricket either, and I don't want to...
I didn't say I didn't like it.
Sorry, I don't like cricket. I don't want to ask someone. I don't think it's okay to use an app for kindergarten kids to sell if they're concentrating at school.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's not on. I don't think the rise in AI companions, where people find friendship online with an artificial agent, is great for the ongoing well-being of society. But that same technology has a good use as well. So
Even the cricket app, though, there's people whose dreams are to be cricket commentators who are reassessing the financial viability of those dreams now because
That's true.
they're going to be replaced by much cheaper.
No, not at all, because it's not a commentary app. I want to be clear on that, because what I love about it is, why are we great at cricket? Because we have
Australian.
Well, because we're Australian, great. It's because we have a really strong grassroots program. It doesn't just suddenly happen at the age of 18 we become great cricketers. We have a really strong program. And what this does is build that connection between grassroots and that advanced elite level. And you think about that opportunity across sports. I can get off that soapbox. Let's go back to the really hard stuff.
Well, actually,
The perils,
while we're
we've got to keep
cricket,
on the
that
perils.
same technology is also used for gambling. A number of gambling companies are taking that predictive technology for almost any sport, from little kids soccer right up to the pro league, to try and rig gambling outcomes. So for every good use, there's a dark use. It's up to us to decide that, and also government.
Yeah, it's not just up to us. I think regulation, but tech moves so quickly and regulation really struggles to keep up.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't struggle to keep up. That's a good story that people who want to do things with technology say. Regulation keeps up perfectly well with technology. We just need to decide how and where to enforce it. We could do some better things, but the law applies to everyone, including people who make computers. So I think
Yeah,
it can
I think
keep
there
up,
is a
actually.
challenge and a tension there, though, because in Australia at the moment, we probably don't have the level of regulation that we see in other jurisdictions. I appreciate that face, thank you.
Sorry.
But particularly specific to AI, you're right, we have the Data Act, we have the Privacy Act, there are absolutely things in place, but this is a really unusual technology, and we love that the government's looking at those guardrails that help bring precision to it, because what you're talking about are different risk levels in use cases. So there are low-risk use cases that we think are great, we all love those, but there are those high-risk ones, and the one you just talked to, which is, should we be monitoring children's concentration levels and then serving them up insights? I have the most awful resting face. You've probably noticed it. It looks like I'm really angry all the time. I would be getting notifications served at me constantly. And so you're right, that's not the place we want to use it. And so you're trying to find this opportunity between regulation and what big tech is doing. And so we have to do a level of regulation as well. So we won't let our technology be used for the kind of facial recognition that you're talking about. We won't, like you would have heard, there's a news article out there, we wouldn't let the US policing use Microsoft's facial recognition technology because we don't think it should be used there. We think that that has potential to impact your human rights. So it should not have a role there. We think that if the technology has the potential to harm your physical or psychological well-being, it doesn't play a role there. And if it has a chance of impacting your life consequences, like can you get a loan, it doesn't have a role to play there. And I think that's the tension that you're talking to, Lish.
And maybe Microsoft wouldn't, but others?
There's a bigger tension there as well. I mean, there's financial tensions. It made, it's not necessarily in your best interests to do things where you're going to secure great financial rewards. I don't want to criticise you there, but I'm just saying there are lots of tensions. Good news, I can give you some good news in this respect, which is, since we don't have the government representative here, but I have been sitting on the committee that he supports as well, which has been reporting to government about advising them about how to regulate this space. There was a wide-ranging consultation, record number of over 500 submissions to that consultation last year. And I would be unsurprised if the government doesn't respond by the end of this year, perhaps, with some formal regulation. There's been a very good blueprint that's been put in place, which is the EU AI Act, which came into force on the 1st of January this year in Europe. It's now being implemented by the AI Office. That's giving us good insight as to how you can put in additional regulation to do with the new harms that are appearing. That's something that I would be unsurprised here in Australia if we don't have something like that well in train by the end of this year.
So it's interesting. I'm going to be the academic now and say, bring this back. So we've talked about the benefits, we've talked about the harms, same technology. We've talked about the fact the law does apply, but perhaps not well enough to the technology. Why is AI different? Why is it that we're so worried about it when we're not worried currently about electricity or the internet?
There is something unique.
I know there is, and I'm going to say, and I think you've written a book on it, Toby. Tell us, why is AI different then, that we do have to have these special guardrails?
Well, I think the most fundamental difference is that
You can come and sit here.
No, this is great. No.
the fundamental difference is that we're actually giving machines the ability to make decisions. We've never built a technology before where machines could make decisions with limited or no even oversight from humans. That takes us to a new place in terms of worrying about the ethical, morality of the situation, in terms of the legality of the situation. Because previously, humans were accountable. If something went wrong, someone got injured, you could hold a human accountable.
Humans still are accountable.
Yeah, humans.
But you're right, of course, that the machines are doing things faster and bigger and
they may be doing it with no human oversight, in which case you have to say, well, who am I pointing the finger at to be held
What's this machine called? At what stage is this level? Is this general intelligence?
That's why, there's been some of the most interesting, passionate debate around autonomous cars, because suddenly the car's driving along the road, there's no human in sight who's doing the driving, accident happens, someone unfortunately gets killed, who are you going to hold responsible?
Legally, that's a really yes.
Yeah.
There is a legal answer to that, but it may not be
there is
the
a legal
one we
answer,
want.
but it's also a societal question as well.
That's right.
Right. So
I agree.
there's deep questions here which go to when you ask people, there's a moral argument, which is as soon as the autonomous cars are anything better than humans, we should ban all humans from driving, because we'll save lives. So from a utilitarian perspective, that would make the world a better place. I'm pretty sure we're not in that world. We will demand, I think I'm happy we demand, that the autonomous cars, self-driving cars, are better at driving than humans, have fewer accidents. But how much better then should they be? It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Should they? Clearly, I don't think we're happy with them just being just as good, although if they're just as good, then there'll be no more accidents, so the world hasn't changed. We will demand that they be much better. But how much better? That's an interesting... It's not a legal question, it's a societal question. It's how much do we value lives? What sort of world do we want it to be, where autonomous cars sometimes are causing accidents?
Talking about how do we value lives, I just want to step it up a notch to geopolitical ramifications of warfare that's being... Do we want to go there?
I thought we were trying to get out of the pit of despair. We can keep staying in this pit of despair for a bit longer if you want.
No, because I think that's a lot of us go to big politics, sort of altering election outcomes, misinformation, deep fakes, finding the truth amongst it all. Is there an answer to that?
So there are answers to those issues. They are terrifying issues. That is the dark side of technology, amplifying misinformation, alienating people from their communities, particularly lethal weapons and so on. But part of the answer to that is actually that we live in a world where nation states don't cooperate. Because
increasingly so.
All of those problems can be resolved, but they require nation states to cooperate. And at this point in time, we don't have agreement on things that are real and physical in terms of cooperation, let alone the somewhat abstract and amorphous ideas of what happens if the autonomous lethal weapon becomes rogue, or what happens if there's so much misinformation that, well, we can all imagine. That one, I think.
If only there was a similar app to Sarah's where we could all say, what is this country? Okay, I get that now.
But I think nation state, that term has become like a negative word. We actually use it with a negative connotation. In every news article, it was a nation state attack. We don't talk about it in those terms of being a positive thing where we have relationships across nation states. We use it as a term of there was a cyber attack and it was a nation state-led attack. And if you talked about war, like the first shots fired in the Ukraine were cybersecurity shots. That's what they tried to do. Russia tried to take down technology across the Ukraine. That was the first shot they fired in that war. And so we have to think about how do we use this technology. For every great use, there will be a misuse of it. That has been through the history of time. We created rifles to hunt with, and then we shot each other with them. Like it's one of the unfortunate things we do as humanity. We find those misuses. DeepSeek came out, and the first thing everyone tried to do was break it, as opposed to look at the amazing research that went into it. It's just the thing we do as humanity, is to try and misuse these. And so how do we actually then, as society, make sure that we don't tap into these things? And so you talked about misinformation and disinformation, and that becomes really powerful in a fractured society. You only believe the misinformation and disinformation if we're not able to fact check, if we can't rely on the media, on great sources of information on each other, and therefore nation states tap into that and use it to influence outcomes of elections. They use it in negative ways.
Let's look at the path forward then. Where do we go from here? Where are we, and how quickly is it going to transition to really got to get on board?
Well, I think
or start crocheting?
that's the most surprising. So, as I said, I've spent 40 years working in the field. The most surprising thing about the moment in time we find us now is the rate of progress. That $1 billion is being spent on AI every day. I never expected that 20% of the world's R&D is being spent on that one technology. That's the thing that surprised me most. I expected us to build smarter and smarter machines and to get to places that we've got to, but I never expected to see that rate of progress. And that's, I think, the thing that challenges us both is, the breadth of the technology, its ability to infiltrate so many different parts of our lives, whether it be our military, our politics, our education system, our medicine, whatever it is, AI is going to be turning up in all those different parts of our lives. But the speed with which it's turning up, the rate of progress is astounding, even to someone like myself who's spent his life embedded in the field, to see the scale of investment which is fueling that progress. And I think that makes it the unique challenge for us, which is that other technologies, we went through the Industrial Revolution, electrification of our lives, the steam engines, there's lots of technologies, the telegraph, there's lots of things that have come in and transformed how we go about our lives. But most of those we had 50 years. Industrial Revolution took the best part of 50 years. This one is happening in the course of, it seems like overnight, but weeks or months or years. We don't have decades.
How do you see this pace affecting us, whether it's our cognitive revolution that we'll have or in the technical revolution?
Well, I think that is in some sense the greatest challenge, because things like it's going to change the nature of work. Some jobs are going to disappear, some jobs are going to be created. But how do people keep up with that? How do they reskill themselves when things are changing so rapidly underneath them? I think that is, people will get there. We humans, we're immensely adaptable, flexible. We will get there, but the problem is we don't have time.
We were hoping you'd answer that for us. How do we get there?
Well, of course, AI again is going to help educate us. It's going to provide these tutors that will help us, lifelong learn. There's lots of things that AI can do to help us, but a lot of it is about society. A lot of it is about politics, about wise leadership.
Yeah, I think that's all right. I mean, what I would say, having taken us to the pit of doom, is that I teach at a university, you teach. You do all sorts of policy and exciting roles. So we're surrounded by young people as well. And I don't think that, the students I teach are not overwhelmed by despair. They're not cheating, as seems to be the popular narrative. They're still reading books. They're still engaging with culture. They're still reaching out for friends. It's just that they also have this new technology that they are growing up with, and that doesn't have to delude them of the things that we might value. They can make those choices, but of course university students are the privileged students. They are generally quite students who've had the opportunity to come to university, pursue higher education, spend time thinking about these things. And I want everybody in Australia, and in fact everyone in the Asia Pacific region, to also have that opportunity to choose how, when and where they engage with this technology, and how, when and where it makes their life better and different, as opposed to being the subjects of AI that is making the decisions about them. And I do believe we can make those choices and allow that to happen.
Can I make an unashamed advert here, which is, so one of the things I'm proudest to be involved in is the Day of AI. Every year we have one day in May where we go into thousands of schools. We've reached hundreds of thousands of kids, giving them a taste of the future, trying to excite them about AI, about STEM in general, and trying to inspire them to build on the technology and use it for good things.
Yeah.
Supported by Microsoft. Microsoft is one of our sponsors.
But I think you've just touched on, because you asked how do we do this, I don't think there can be enough education. And at every level for everyone, so you understand whatever your requirement is, but at a base level throughout schools, universities, TAFEs, whatever community you sit in, there cannot be enough education on this topic at the moment. And what I love is this pivot to what then becomes truly human. So what do you focus on? Creativity, cognitive agility. You alluded to the ability for us to be agile in these moments. So creativity, cognitive agility, and critical thinking become the skills that we bring in using these technologies. And those are the things I see universities now looking to amplify, using different ways of assessing students so that there isn't cheating in the system, getting them to get GPT to write their essay for them and then making them analyse what it wrote. That's the kind of thing I think is really powerful in this moment.
I want to mention one other cognitive ability that we will need to focus us as humans on to race against the machines. That's our emotional and social intelligence. We're in the Academy of Science, but I'm really disappointed how we've made humanities degrees more expensive, because it's emotional and social intelligence that machines are uniquely disadvantaged at, and that humans, our superpower was not our intelligence. We used our superpower, which was our society, our ability to work together with our intelligence to build the world that we see around us.
I think this is such an important point, because we know, and I'm not a scientist, but we do know that our bodies change when we're with other people, that we have all sorts of things happen when we're with people. We have senses that are stimulated and so on. We all have experienced this. And the one thing that I think, one of the things we need to be really careful of, I think, in this age, it's not about AI, it's about technology, which is the retreat to our own bedrooms as a way of interacting with the world. And the thing we need to do, I think, is keep remembering why it's good to go outside and why it's good to be with other people and the meaning that gives us in our life, and then we can make our decisions about technology. I think loneliness, quite frankly, is the biggest enemy of us all.
It's the new cancer, apparently.
Siri hasn't told me yet to close this down, so we've still got about 10 minutes for questions. So I'd like to throw it open to you on the floor, because I guarantee there's lots of questions, curious Canberrans here tonight, but also online. If you want to fire a question off, we have got a computer open ready to put those to our panel. So if you'd like to raise your hands, if you're upstairs, there's a microphone at the front of what are we calling that? It's either the
North Pole.
North Pole, thanks. Go
That's
to that. Otherwise,
north,
just raise your hand.
That's probably not north.
No. Who knows in this room? Could be spinning as we speak.
12 o'clock. 12 o'clock.
Just raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question.
Got one over here.
Okay.
My question relates to these huge data centres and where all that data has actually come from to build this AI, and how you validate that data. You know, junk in is junk out. Good stuff in is good stuff out. How is that monitored? And is there regulation around that? And how is the data protected? Because my biggest concern is that, yes, I've got my smartphone. I know AI is working on it. What is it taking from my phone that I'm not aware of? And that frightens me, to be honest.
I'll take that because it's a really good question and I feel like it was pointed at me. So I'll step into that.
I don't think the other two of us have data centers, so.
Oh, fair enough. All right. Fine, it's mine. So the data is owned by those organisations building the models. Microsoft at the moment hosts 1,800 different models, and those models aren't owned by Microsoft. They're owned by each of the model developers. So each developer has a different way in which they've done that. Some have used synthetic data. They've actually used AI to generate the data they then use to train the model. Some of them have purchased data sets. So you would have seen a lot of articles out about different news providers that have sold their data, their stories to help feed those models. So a lot of it is purchased, and some of it is how many people have actually read the terms and conditions on their iPhone. I knew you would have. All right, we've got in this room, unless there's only 3 people with iPhones, so that's actually the problem. I love Jeannie talked to it, which is consciously making choices about what we're doing with our data. It's the same every time we use social media. Do you know what you're actually stepping into and signing up for, and what all that data we put out there can be used for? So it's a really good and valid question. You need to make a personal choice about what you share and what you're prepared to share. I turn off sharing on every app, on every device I have, because I don't want anyone to own that other than me. But yes, in those models, it is a mixture depending on who owns it, who runs it, as to where that data came from.
Sorry, there's also part of it which is also data that was taken without consent or compensation. I stand with all the authors on the world where the tech companies have behaved, in many cases, terribly by taking their data, scanning their books, and ingesting it into the models. My books that I wrote were ingested into ChatGPT. My publisher said, "How do you know that?" I said, "Well, ask it what's the contents of chapter 3. Gives you a very good summary of chapter 3. I didn't give them consent, or they didn't give me compensation for ingesting that, as they did on tens of thousands of other authors, hundreds of thousands of books, all the graphic designers of the world, where the data was taken, scraped from the internet.
It's a beautiful place that we should be talking to as well, which is data ownership. One of the superpowers that we have as Australia is our data sets. We have really fascinating, clean data sets. You think about our mining industry and agriculture. So how do we protect them? But also, how do we find that opportunity as Australia and a nation to monetize them and get actually remunerated for the data that we have?
I'm afraid we're at the point where it was the financial incentives were so great that the tech companies were prepared to behave in ways that are probably illegal. There are court cases going down in the US. The New York Times is suing OpenAI. There's a bunch of lawsuits going down where they did things that they knew were bad behavior at the very least, if not legal, and undermine the culture that we value in this society. If the livelihoods of authors, of graphic designers, of musicians is undermined by these tools, then what happens to people who made their living by writing, who made their living by making music, who contribute to the society that we value?
There is something truly human, though. There's a difference between a piece of art created by AI and art created by a human, because there's a story behind what inspired you to do it. So I don't think it changes why I want to listen to a particular piece of music versus having AI-generated music. They're two different art forms. It's changed over time. We have new art forms that get created all the time. You think about the riots when Impressionism became a thing. We have an evolution of art forms over time, and AI doesn't take away from us being creators of art. It just adds a different form of that art.
Takes the monetary.
The Financial Times did a
Financial,
study
yeah.
where they showed that when these tools were released, there was a 15% drop in the number of jobs being offered to graphic designers and a 15% drop in the amount of money that...
At the same time as there's been a global recession and all jobs have dropped. So we can draw a line and say it's AI's fault, or we can accept that these things go hand in hand.
We will go to
A
another
15% drop in graphic design that wasn't seen in things that AI wasn't producing. It was timed with the release of DALL-E and Midjourney. Now, correlation is not causation, but you're on a very thin ice.
Next question.
So I'm going to return it to the...
We'll go to the
answer
legal
question
ethicist.
there. Actually, actually we can solve copyright. We
Yes,
need
yeah,
to
yeah.
decide to do it.
Yeah.
And on that question of is there any responsibility for bad data and bad outcomes? Yes, there is. The problem at the moment, it waits for the harm to occur. And one of the things that the Australian government, for example, has been looking at and has strived to, I'm being Anthony Murphy now for the government, one of the things the government has strived to do with its voluntary AI standard is move that inquiry forward so the harm doesn't occur. So it was a fantastic multi-dimensional question.
Yep.
HD.
Another question over here.
I've just got a quick question. I'm wondering how AI can be used to protect us. So we're having massive storms as a result of climate change, and they develop very rapidly and drop loads of rain or massive hail. And I'm just wondering, can AI be used in this, because it's so, the weather systems are so rapidly changing, to protect us and warn us?
Yes, it can. Very wonderful question. As an example, there are AI tools being developed here in Australia to work out how bushfires progress and warn people ahead of time that they're in a zone that's going to be a risk. There are AIs that colleagues of mine have worked on to work out how flooding is going to impact a zone and how you can evacuate people most effectively. So there's definitely things that we can do to try and use AI to help us make better predictions about what's going to happen in the future and make better decisions about how to save people's lives and their property.
So, and this is such a lovely story, the work that's being done in prediction. But I was I went to a conference in India, which is about AI in the ASEAN region, particularly for developing or global south countries. There was a group of researchers in the Philippines that wanted to develop a technology for predicting areas most at risk from monsoon damage. And they couldn't get the satellite photos that they needed to train their AI because they couldn't afford to pay for them. So one of the things we need to remember with all of these advances is to make sure that the benefits are spread equitably across different states and peoples.
Can you hear me? Yep. So one of the themes that the panel touched upon is accountability, and there was some hinting, I guess, that we might be delegating some accountability to the models that we're using, for better or worse. From that perspective, how important is the question of interrogability in these models, and how realistic is it as the models become more and more complex to be able to explain the outcomes?
Anyone?
Are you looking at me again? Great. I love, you can tell it's a hard question when everyone looks to me. This is awesome. It's really important, and each model operator has different values as to how they actually do that. The ability for you to be able to interrogate, that's really important. For you to understand how it came up with an answer is really important, and particularly if you think about some of those use cases, which we've touched on the edges of, like we talked about policing in negative terms, such as using it for vision, like facial recognition, but actually policing has thousands and thousands of hours of video that they have to trawl through when they're trying to bring a case. So there's a really great role and opportunity for them to use AI to find the moment in that video that has people in it, so they can watch that piece only. But they've got to be able to explain how they got to that. And so explainability within models and that piece of it is absolutely critical. So yeah, it's absolutely vital, I think, for any provider of models to be able to offer that.
I'm going to disagree, I'm afraid. I think explainability is perhaps overrated. So if I could develop an AI system that's 99.9% accurate at diagnosing some particular cancer, which is not explainable, or I can give you a system that's 60% accurate but is explainable, I know the one I'm going to use when I go to the hospital. And if you think about it, what's the gold standard? Humans. Humans are terrible at explaining their decisions. There's lots of psychological literature that shows that humans make stuff up when you ask them to explain how they came to a decision post hoc. Well, anyway. But why is it that we trust doctors? because we put them in an institution, we surround them with processes and regulations that allows us to put our lives in their hands, even if they can't explain the decisions. And we have to build those institutions around AI systems as well. If they can explain those decisions, well, maybe that's part of, part of us trusting them. But there's lots of ways, there's lots of places where maybe we're not going to be able to explain decisions. We don't really understand the human
You're talking
brain.
to that wonderful social license, because you have to have trust in it. So if I just tell you that that's the answer, are you going to trust me?
No, but if you tell me that this is like how we train doctors, we've tested the system, we've thrown out the bad apples, there's a whole system, a process of ensuring that you can go to your doctor and say, what's wrong with me? I'll take the tablets. I don't interrogate my doctor and say, I want to see your medical certificates. I know that the doctor's going to be...
Jeannie, but
The doctor will be struck off.
how many operations have you done like this? But I mean, I think that's quite. I think actually.
Yeah, and again, if I go to this, if I go to the surgeon, all I ask them is, how many of these operations have you done in the past, and what's your success rate?
But that's explainability.
But if you go to
I don't say to him, how are you going to do the operation? How are you going to cut my brain open?
But if you go to
Lish really wants us to stop.
if you go to a court of law, part of our understanding of the role of justice in our society is that we have this thing where we have open justice, where people get to present their cases and judges are expected to give reasons for their outcomes. So what I'm going to suggest is that probably policing, judging, public service may be very different from, medical, drug testing, even environmental science.
Great, thanks, Jeannie. Another question. I think we have time for one more question, and then if there's any online at the front here.
When I was a student, we were not allowed to use a calculator, but later on, they allowed us to use the calculator. I can see the other students now, not me. Then again, when the Google came, and the students were not allowed to use the Google for their assignments. And I'm just wondering now the students are using for their assignments the Google or other books or two. Do you think at some stage students will be using AI, whether they are in the school or college or in the university?
There already is. No, and in the best possible way. South Australian Government, New South Wales Government, Queensland Government have all created chat capabilities for students to use because they know they're going to use it, and so they want to put guardrails around it so that it won't produce content that may be explicit in nature or have particular language in it. So it's absolutely being used across education, and Catholic Education in Brisbane have just rolled out Copilot across the entirety of their teaching staff to help give them the same tools so they can prepare lesson plans and base it all on their own knowledge base. So absolutely.
But the interesting part of your question is that at primary school, we still don't give kids calculators. We actually still teach them how to add up, how to subtract, how to do long multiplication, long division, because those give you an important understanding of the mathematics of numbers and so on. And then at some point, okay, you've mastered that, you get given a calculator, and there's a calculator on my phone, a calculator on my wrist. I've always got a calculator with me if I need it now. But it was important that I learn those skills. And the same will be true with these chatbots, these writing tools, that people will still have to learn how to write, because otherwise they'll never develop those skills.
The concern is cognitive decline, and philosophers have thought about it a lot, and the extent to which cognitive decline happens when we cease to do particular activities. So people's maths or their arithmetic may be designed with calculators. So does ChatGPT cause cognitive decline? And my friends who are philosophers say, actually, writing helps us think. So the act of writing is really important because it's how we think about things. So there is an issue, I think, with the rise of the technology, but to your point, we can't run away from it. We need to teach.
But Jeannie, this is the challenge we face. This is like
It is the challenge.
social media. We ran this big experiment on especially young people, and we're now starting. Yeah,
Exactly.
we're now starting to see the price of that experiment. And I'm not sure that we're correcting that by a social media ban for under 16 in this country. Other countries are doing that. We're doing the same again with these tools, which is we're running a big experiment on on our next generation.
And how long do you run that experiment for? And when will you see the results of the cognitive decline or the huge shift? I have to wrap it up. See, Siri has already indicated I have to wrap it up now. The human element is overriding that.
Could I sneak in a quick online question?
One question from online.
We have a few from the online audience. I have one here for the panel. What does Australia's compute need to look like to get AI adoption right?
Again, it's silence. It's over to me. All right. I'm going to use the measure that Mark used, suburb sizes. If we look at the compute needed in the next 2 years to run the way in which we see AI scaling across Australia and the data centres that would be needed to fuel that, we need the amount of power required to currently power Melbourne. Significant power need. And so this is a great opportunity for this to be a forcing factor as well, because every data centre operator in Australia at the moment would love to be able to use sustainable energy of some kind and a set of firming technologies to make that happen. So I think that the two things go together, but in order to make it happen, you're seeing all the hyperscalers, large providers, building data centres at the moment at a rapid rate. In case you didn't know, we have the second highest number of data centres in the whole of the Asia region. Only China has more than we do. We have more data centres than Russia. That was a really fascinating fact I learnt recently. So we actually have this also additional opportunity, which is we are a hub for the region. We provide a lot of that capability across the region because we have so many data centres. So we're on the right path, but we could use this as a forcing function for more green technology.
The limiting factor, though, is humans, not compute, is actually having enough people who understand the technology, who can use the technology as much as it is the compute.
On that, what question do you get asked the most at parties and how do you answer it, just so we can cut you off, if anyone leaves here and wants to corner you? What is the question that you get asked most when they find out that you work in AI?
I get asked, surely you're too old to know anything about that.
What's the answer?
Actually, I don't want to answer.
Never too old.
Never ask a lady her age.
Sarah?
Is the AI going to kill me? And we always laugh because we're like, ha 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 ha. But the reality is it sits in the back of our mind because the stories we've told ourselves come from all those books that we were talking about before. We tell ourselves the negative story, and in fact we were laughing because Jeannie was like, Skynet. And we're like, I don't think that's what you mean. Do you mean Skylink?
Starlink.
Starlink, oh my God, see, we're making up names for it now. But that's the question I get asked a lot. And it's human nature to look for the things I'm going to lose in any evolution of technology, in any moment of change. And so I love that question because it opens a whole door to a whole lot of other conversations we can have about the opportunity as well as the potential risks.
What should my kids study so that they have a job? Well, three answers. Be someone inventing the future, so do things like AI. Be someone creative or artistic or artisan, because again, machines are not going to be creative, or have emotional or social intelligence. I'm told the most important skill of a politician or a CEO or a doctor is their emotional and social intelligence.
Wonderful. That pretty much ends our time here tonight. And before I thank our fabulous panel, the Academy would like me to give an announcement because they're pleased to announce the inaugural nomination round for the Brian Anderson Medal for Information and Communications Technology. Now, the award recognises outstanding research by an early career researcher in the field of ICT, the very topic that we're tackling this year. Awardees will receive a medal, an honorarium of $7,500 and the opportunity to present their work at the Shine Dome. The Brian Anderson Medal is part of the Academy's prestigious awards program, recognising the country's top scientific researchers at every career stage. And the nominations open tomorrow. They close on the 1st of May. So if you know anyone that is working in that field, and hopefully there are many of you here connected to that, please get them to nominate. The next event, if this has whetted your appetite and you were just here on spec, The next event is on Tuesday, the 8th of April. It's AI and health. So now we'll be doing a deep dive into all of these particular issues, and hopefully it's as hotly contested a panel as it is tonight. I really enjoyed the thorough dissection and ideas. The speakers are still being arranged, but we will have Professor Monica Janda from the University of Queensland, who does amazing work using AI for early detection of melanoma. If you've got any feedback about tonight's event, there's a QR code, but the QR code, it'll be up there. But mostly I want to thank all you wonderful bag of proteins that have turned up tonight here in person, in actual human person or online. I really want to thank you. It's been an absolute education, a real antidote, I think, in all the information we're getting thrown at us, and perhaps it's easy to just go and crochet rather than approach it
With a friend.
Crochet with a friend. But that critical thinking and the curiosity that you've approached it with. So can you please give a big round of applause to stubborn Professor Toby Walsh, the precocious Professor Jeannie Patterson, and I think we can all agree, holding her own, Sarah Carney. Now,
and thank you to our wonderful chair who kept everybody in control.
I don't know, yeah. It's been my pleasure, and honestly, when I met these guys for the first time a couple of weeks ago just to chat about what it was going to be about, it blew my mind that the expertise we would have in the room. So I'm so delighted that so many of you have turned out tonight and for your knowledge. And I guess to me, it's 20 watts well spent. And I want to challenge you all tonight to get home without using your maps and see if that cognitive ability has really stuck around. And in the words of Sky, net, link, well, I'll be back.